You're listening to The Observing Eye. Pirate radio for the mind. Coming at you fresh from the computer hell cabin.
Hello, you beautiful lot. It is Sunday, the 22nd of December, 2024, the final episode of this year, and you are listening to The Observing Eye, coming at you live from the computer hell cabin. Every week we get psychological, philosophical, and all manner of introspective. I'm David, and this week we are talking about a man who took thinking very seriously. A man so disciplined and methodical, he probably would have scheduled his own existential crisis. And that is Immanuel Kant. But first, I just need to run through a little bit of admin before we continue. Now, of course, it's Christmas, isn't it, in 3 days? So I'm going to have a bit of a break, and we're going to be coming back on Sunday, the 15th of January. So there's going to be 2 weeks between episodes now, or a 2-week break, and then I'm going to do the one the week after. So just, try and amuse yourselves in the interim. I'm sure there's plenty that you can do over Christmas, other than listen to me babble on about philosophy. And just want to wish you all a fabulous Christmas before we get into the thick of it. That's enough from me. Let's get back to the episode. Now, you might be asking yourself, why should I care about a philosopher from the 18th century? Well, to put it simply, Kant wasn't just another thinker. He was a philosophical powerhouse, the intellectual equivalent of Taylor Swift, minus the stadium tours and the screaming fans. His contributions to philosophy were so groundbreaking that they initiated what is known as the Copernican Revolution in philosophy. Now, that was no small feat. He fundamentally redefined our understanding of reality, knowledge, and ethics, achieving this in an era devoid of modern distractions like social media. Without memes or podcasts, he had the bandwidth to contemplate ideas that continue to resonate centuries later. But fear not, this is not going to be some tedious discourse filled with esoteric jargon like transcendental idealism or categorical imperative, although I promise these concepts will make an appearance at some point. Consider this an introduction to Kant that is accessible and not too much of a slog like some of his works. Now, of course, Kant probably wouldn't approve of this approach because he wasn't exactly known for his humour, but we will forgive him. When you're redefining humanity's intellectual horizons, it is hard to find time for the banter. You ever found yourself questioning free will, grappling with moral dilemmas, or speculating whether reality is an elaborate illusion? Well, Kant laid the groundwork for these debates. While he never tweeted his thoughts or went viral on TikTok, his philosophical writings remain a masterclass in critical thinking, albeit a rather dense and demanding one. So join me on this journey as we dissect the mind of a man who simply couldn't stop interrogating life's biggest questions. Alright, let's get started. Or as Kant might put it, let's engage in a systematic critique of our preconceptions about reality. When you think of philosophers, you might imagine chaotic geniuses scribbling frantically into the night or pacing wildly surrounded by stacks of books and half-empty coffee cups. But Immanuel Kant, he was the antithesis of chaos. In fact, his daily routine was so precise that it bordered on mythological, a life structured to an almost comical degree of regularity. If discipline were a competitive sport, Kant would have been its undefeated champion. Let's start with the basics. Kant woke up at 5 a.m. every single day, and I mean every single day. There were no late nights, no just one more chapter indulgences, and certainly no hitting the snooze button. Kant's morning ritual began with a cup of tea, a small indulgence perhaps, but one that reflected his calculated approach to life. He would then sit at his desk and begin work on his writings and lectures, dedicating his sharpest mental energy to the pursuits of reason and philosophy. For Kant, mornings were sacred, a time for unbroken focus. Now, you might think that someone this regimented would work tirelessly until the wee hours of the night, but not Kant. He understood the importance of balance, even if that balance was meticulously scheduled. By 7 a.m, he was done with his initial round of work and would transition into a short stint of lecturing or preparing for his next class. Kant was, after all, a university professor for much of his life, and his role as an educator was as central to his identity as his philosophical endeavours. After his morning commitments, Kant would return to his own studies, diving back into the dense, labyrinthine questions that defined his career. This phase of the day was likely when he worked on his critiques, those monumental texts that redefined Western philosophy. But even during his intellectual heavy lifting, Kant maintained a strict schedule. By 11 a.m, his work paused for a light midday meal. It's worth noting that Kant wasn't one for lavish feasts. His meals were simple, unpretentious affairs, often enjoyed in the company of a few close friends. Conversations at these meals was said to be lively but rarely touched on philosophy. Even the great thinker needed a break from contemplating the categorical imperative. And then came the part of Kant's day that has become almost legendary, his daily walk. Every afternoon at precisely 3:30 p.m, Kant would set out on a stroll through Königsberg, his hometown. It wasn't just a casual wander, it was a ritual as fixed as the sunrise. In fact, Kant's walk was so punctual that townsfolk reportedly set their clocks by it. Rain or shine, Kant would don his coat and hat and walk the same route, reflecting on his work or simply taking in the world around him. The only recorded time he deviated from this routine was the day he was engrossed in reading Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Émile. Yes, the power of another philosopher's words was the only thing capable of disrupting Kant's famously rigid schedule. But why was this walk so important? It wasn't just about exercise or fresh air, though these were certainly benefits. Kant believed in the importance of stepping away from work, of giving the mind a chance to rest and reset. In many ways, his walk was a form of meditation, a chance to process ideas and let inspiration flow organically. For a man so obsessed with structure, it was also an opportunity to experience the unstructured beauty of the natural world, a theme that would later emerge in his philosophical discussions of aesthetics and the sublime. By early evening, Kant would return home to resume his studies, though this second session of work was shorter and less intense. As the evening wore on, he would retire with a book, often related to history or travel, topics that allowed him to expand his horizons beyond the confines of Königsberg, even if only in his imagination. Despite never travelling far from his hometown, Kant's intellectual reach was global, encompassing ideas from across cultures and disciplines. By 10 p.m, the day's activities came to a close. Kant would climb into bed, ready to repeat the entire process the following day. And repeat it he did, with almost mechanical precision, for decades. His routine wasn't just a quirk, it was a reflection of his philosophical beliefs. Kant held that discipline and structure were essential to achieving one's goals, whether those goals involved writing the Critique of Pure Reason or simply leading a meaningful life. Of course, there's a certain irony in the fact that this famously methodical man was the author of some of the most abstract and complex ideas in Western philosophy. How does someone so grounded in routine produce theories that challenge the very foundations of human perception? Perhaps it was precisely this balance, the interplay between structure and abstraction, that allowed Kant to thrive. His daily routine provided the stability he needed to explore the profound instability of existence itself. Kant's life might sound rigid, even monotonous to the modern ear, but for him it was anything but. His structured days were a canvas upon which he painted some of the most revolutionary ideas in intellectual history. It's a testament to the power of routine, discipline, and focus, and maybe a lesson for all of us about the value of carving out time for deep, uninterrupted thinking. So the next time you're tempted to scroll aimlessly through your phone or procrastinate on a project, ask yourself, what would Kant do? The answer is clear. He'd stick to his schedule, take his afternoon walk, and get back to work. And who knows, maybe in doing so, you'll stumble upon your own version of a philosophical breakthrough. Immanuel Kant's contribution to philosophy is often described as revolutionary, and not just in the metaphorical sense. Kant himself likened his impact on the field to the shift initiated by Nicolaus Copernicus in astronomy. Just as Copernicus turned the scientific world on its head by proposing that the Earth revolves around the Sun, Kant upended the philosophical world by suggesting that our understanding of reality is shaped as much by the observer as by the observed. This bold move became known as the Copernican Revolution in philosophy, and it marked a fundamental shift in how we approach knowledge, perception, and truth. To fully appreciate the significance of Kant's ideas, it's essential to understand the intellectual environment he was responding to. Before Kant, two dominant schools of thought clashed over the nature of knowledge: rationalism and empiricism. Rationalists like Descartes argued that reason and innate ideas were the primary sources of knowledge, while empiricists like Hume claimed that all knowledge derives from sensory experience. Both approaches seem to have merit, but neither could fully explain how we know what we know. David Hume's empiricism posed a particularly devastating challenge to philosophy. Hume argued that concepts like causality and the self were not grounded in reason or experience, but were instead habits of the mind. This skeptical stance left philosophy in a precarious position, seemingly unable to provide a solid foundation for knowledge or certainty. Enter Kant. Motivated by Hume's challenge, Kant set out to resolve this impasse. He sought a middle ground that could reconcile the insights of both rationalism and empiricism while addressing their limitations. The result was his groundbreaking work, The Critique of Pure Reason, in which he proposed a new way of thinking about knowledge and reality. At the heart of Kant's Copernican Revolution is the concept of transcendental idealism. See, I told you we'd get here eventually. Kant argued that the human mind actively shapes our experience of the world. Instead of passively receiving information from the outside, our minds impose structures and categories that organize and interpret sensory data. In other words, reality as we perceive it is not a direct reflection of the external world, but is mediated by the cognitive frameworks of the observer. This idea can be broken down into two key components: the distinction between phenomena and noumena, and the role of the mind's categories. Kant distinguished between the world as it appears to us, which is called phenomena, and the world as it exists independently of our perception, called noumena. According to Kant, we can never have direct access to the noumenal world. Our knowledge is always limited to the realm of phenomena. This doesn't mean that the external world doesn't exist. Kant was not an idealist in the sense of denying reality. Instead, he argued that the noumenal world is simply beyond the reach of human cognition. What we experience is not reality in itself, but reality as filtered through the structures of our mind. So, what are these structures that shape our perception? Kant identified a set of innate categories or concepts that the mind uses to organize sensory data. These include basic notions like causality, space, and time. For Kant, these categories are not derived from experience. They are the preconditions that make experience possible. We don't learn about space and time through observation. We experience everything within space and time because our minds are wired to perceive the world that way. This insight was revolutionary because it redefined the relationship between the mind and the world. Knowledge, Kant argued, is not merely a matter of accurately reflecting an external reality. It is a dynamic interplay between the raw data of experience and the organizing activity of the mind. In this sense, Kant shifted the focus of philosophy from the objects of knowledge to the conditions that make knowledge possible. Kant's ideas had profound implications for philosophy and beyond. By demonstrating that the mind plays an active role in shaping our experience of reality, he challenged the notion of objective universal truth as something we can directly access. Instead, he showed that what we call truth is always mediated by human cognition. This insight paved the way for later philosophical movements like German idealism, phenomenology, and even existentialism. Thinkers like Hegel, Husserl, and Heidegger, the three big H's, built on Kant's work, exploring how human consciousness and subjectivity shape our understanding of the world. In the sciences, Kant's emphasis on the role of the observer influenced fields ranging from quantum physics to psychology. The idea that the act of observation affects the observed can be seen as a distinct echo of Kant's philosophy. Kant's Copernican Revolution remains one of the most significant turning points in the history of thought. By shifting the focus from the external world to the structure of the mind, he not only resolved long-standing debates between rationalism and empiricism, but also opened up new avenues for exploring the nature of knowledge, perception, and reality. His work reminds us that understanding the world requires us to first understand ourselves, a lesson as relevant today as it was in the 18th century. So the next time you find yourself questioning the nature of reality or the limits of human understanding, remember Kant's bold insight. The world is not just out there, it is also in here. The revolution he started continues to shape the way we think, reminding us that even the most abstract ideas can have a profound impact on how we live and understand our lives. Immanuel Kant's contributions to ethics are among the most significant in the history of philosophy, and at the heart of his moral philosophy lies the concept of the categorical imperative. This idea, as dense and abstract as it may sound, is essentially Kant's attempt to answer a fundamental question. What does it mean to act morally? And more importantly, how can we determine whether an action is the right thing to do? Kant's approach to ethics is grounded in reason, not in emotions or consequences. He believed that morality must be universal and objective. It cannot depend on individual desires, cultural norms, or situational factors. In other words, Kant was looking for a moral principle that would hold true in all circumstances for all rational beings. That principle, he argued, is the categorical imperative. To understand the categorical imperative, it is helpful to first contrast it with what Kant calls hypothetical imperatives. A hypothetical imperative is conditional. It tells you what you ought to do if you have a particular goal. For example, if you want to stay healthy, you should exercise regularly is a hypothetical imperative. It's grounded in a specific desire or purpose, and it only applies if that goal matters to you. The categorical imperative, by contrast, is unconditional. It doesn't depend on what you want or what outcomes you're aiming for. Instead, it commands you to act in a certain way simply because it is the right thing to do. According to Kant, moral actions are not about achieving specific ends. They are about following principles that are inherently justifiable. Kant provides several formulations of the categorical imperative, each of which sheds light on a different aspect of moral duty. Let's explore the two most famous formulations. The first formulation of the categorical imperative states, "Act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law." What does that mean? Well, essentially, Kant is asking us to consider whether the principle behind our actions could be applied universally. Imagine that you're considering telling a lie to get out of a difficult situation. According to Kant, you should ask yourself, what if everyone acted this way? What if lying became a universal norm? If the idea of universalizing that behavior leads to a contradiction or an undesirable world, then the action is morally impermissible. Take stealing, for example. If everyone stole whenever they wanted, the concept of personal property would collapse. The very act of stealing relies on the idea that property rights exist. But if everyone stole, those rights would disappear, making the action self-contradictory when universalized. For Kant, this means stealing is morally wrong, no matter the circumstances. The second major formulation of the categorical imperative is, act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of another, always at the same time as an end, never merely as a means. This formulation emphasizes the intrinsic value of human beings. Kant argues that people are not tools or instruments to be used for achieving our goals. Each individual has dignity and worth simply by virtue of being a rational agent. To treat someone merely as a means, to manipulate, exploit, or deceive them for your own benefits, is to violate their inherent moral value. Consider an example. Suppose you borrow money from a friend with no intention of paying it back. In this scenario, you're treating your friend as a means to an end, your financial gain, rather than respecting them as an autonomous individual. For Kant, this kind of behavior is morally unacceptable because it fails to honor the dignity of the other person. Central to Kant's ethical system is the idea of autonomy. For Kant, true morality arises from acting according to principles that we give ourselves through the exercise of reason. This means that moral actions are not about blindly following rules imposed by external authorities. They are about freely choosing to act in accordance with universal moral principles. This emphasis on autonomy is closely tied to Kant's concept of duty. For Kant, doing the right thing is not about pursuing personal happiness or avoiding punishment. It's about acting out of a sense of duty, a recognition that certain actions are required simply because they are morally correct. In Kant's view, an action only has moral worth if it is done from duty, not because of inclination or self-interest. The categorical imperative is more than just a philosophical abstraction. It has profound implications for how we think about ethics in everyday life. It challenges us to move beyond self-centered thinking and to consider the broader impact of our actions. It reminds us that morality is not about achieving specific outcomes, but about respecting principles and the inherent value of others. Kant's framework also provides a powerful critique of consequentialist ethics, such as utilitarianism, which judges actions based on their outcomes. For Kant, the ends do not justify the means. An action is not morally right simply because it leads to good consequences. It is right because it adheres to universal principles of justice and respect. Of course, Kant's ethics are not without their challenges. Critics argue that the categorical imperative can be too rigid, leaving little room for nuance or context. For example, Kant famously argued that it is always wrong to lie, even if lying could save someone's life. This absolute commitment to principle can feel at odds with the complexities of real-world moral dilemmas. Despite these criticisms, Kant's categorical imperative remains a cornerstone of moral philosophy. It continues to inspire debates about the nature of ethics, the role of reason in morality, and the value of human dignity. Whether we agree with Kant or not, his ideas compel us to think deeply about what it means to act rightly and to take responsibility for our moral choices. So the next time you face an ethical decision, consider asking yourself, can my action be universalized? Am I respecting others as ends in themselves? These questions, rooted in Kant's categorical imperative, offer us a timeless guide for navigating the complexities of living a moral life. Immanuel Kant was not just a philosopher of ethics and metaphysics. He also had profound insights into aesthetics, the branch of philosophy concerned with beauty, art, and our emotional responses to them. In his critique of judgment, Kant explores the concepts of beauty and the sublime, offering a framework that remains influential in understanding how we experience and interpret the world around us. For Kant, aesthetic judgment, our ability to recognize something as beautiful or sublime, is distinct from practical or theoretical reasoning. When we call something beautiful, we are not saying it serves a purpose or fits into a scientific explanation. Instead, we're expressing a kind of universal pleasure. Kant argues that this judgment is subjective, in the sense that it arises from our personal feelings, but it also carries a claim to universality. In other words, when we find something beautiful, we instinctively feel that others should agree with us. Why is this? Kant believes that beauty reflects a harmonious relationship between the faculties of imagination and understanding. When we encounter a beautiful object, a painting or a flower for example, our mind engages with it in a way that feels balanced and free. This experience doesn't depend on the object's utility or even its specific qualities. It's about how the object stimulates our cognitive faculties. Beauty for Kant is a kind of purposefulness without purpose, a form of delight that doesn't rely on practical concerns. While beauty is about harmony and balance, the sublime is a different kind of aesthetic experience. The sublime, according to Kant, arises when we encounter something so vast, powerful, or infinite that it overwhelms our senses and imagination. This could be the towering height of a mountain range, the infinite expanse of the night sky, or the ferocity of a storm at sea. These experiences initially feel unsettling or even terrifying, but they also inspire a sense of awe and wonder. Kant distinguishes between two types of the sublime, the mathematical and the dynamical. The mathematical sublime is about sheer scale, objects or phenomena that seem incomprehensibly large or infinite. The dynamical sublime, on the other hand, relates to power and might, such as the raw force of nature. In both cases, the sublime confronts us with something beyond our ability to grasp, forcing us to reckon with the limits of our perception and understanding. But here's the twist. Even as the sublime overwhelms us, it also uplifts us. Kant argues that this is because we realize that our reason, our ability to think and conceptualize, transcends the sensory limitations that the sublime exposes. In facing the sublime, we're reminded of our own intellectual and moral capacities, which are not confined by the physical world. The sublime, then, is not just an encounter with nature's grandeur, it's also an affirmation of human dignity. Kant's analysis of beauty and the sublime isn't just about art or nature. It also has moral implications. For Kant, the appreciation of beauty creates a sense of community and shared humanity. When we find something beautiful, we are drawn out of ourselves and into a connection with others who might share that experience. Beauty, in this sense, encourages a kind of disinterested pleasure, a delight that is free from self-interest or ulterior motives. The sublime, on the other hand, connects us to the moral dimension of human life. By confronting us with the vastness and power of the natural world, the sublime reminds us of our limitations as physical beings. At the same time, it highlights the boundless potential of our reason and moral will. In this way, the sublime serves as a bridge between the natural and the moral worlds, reinforcing Kant's idea that human beings occupy a unique position as rational agents within nature. One of Kant's most intriguing claims about beauty is its universality. When we judge something to be beautiful, we do so with the expectation that others should agree, not because beauty is a property of the object itself, but because the experience of beauty arises from shared faculties of cognition. This universality distinguishes aesthetic judgments from mere preferences. For example, saying that I like chocolate ice cream is a personal preference, while saying this painting is beautiful implies a broader, more universal standard. This universality doesn't mean that everyone will always agree about what is beautiful, but it does suggest that the experience of beauty is grounded in common human faculties. For Kant, this makes beauty a powerful force for connecting individuals and creating mutual understanding. As with much of Kant's philosophy, his ideas about beauty and the sublime have sparked debate and criticism. Some argue that Kant's emphasis on universality overlooks the cultural and historical differences that shape our perceptions of beauty. Others question whether the sublime, as Kant describes it, can truly capture the diverse range of overwhelming experiences people encounter. Despite these critiques, Kant's framework has had a lasting impact on aesthetics and continues to influence how we think about art, nature, and the human experience. His distinction between beauty and the sublime has shaped fields ranging from art criticism to environmental philosophy, providing a lens through which we can explore the emotional and intellectual dimensions of the aesthetic experience. In our modern world, saturated with images and experiences, Kant's insights into beauty and the sublime remain deeply relevant. His emphasis on disinterested pleasure challenges us to engage with art and nature in ways that transcend personal gain or consumption. Similarly, the exploration of the sublime invites us to reflect on our place within the vast interconnected systems of the natural world. Kant's aesthetics remind us that beauty and awe are not trivial distractions. They are fundamental to our humanity. They connect us to one another, to the natural world, and to the deeper questions of existence. Whether we're admiring a sunset, contemplating a masterpiece, or marveling at the night sky, Kant's philosophy offers a framework for understanding why these experiences matter and how they enrich our lives. Immanuel Kant's work has left an indelible mark on philosophy, but as with any influential thinker, his ideas have been subject to a fair share of misunderstanding and misinterpretation. In this segment, we'll explore some of the most common misconceptions about Kant, clarify what he actually meant, and examine why those misunderstandings persist. One of the most pervasive myths about Kant is that he was an austere, emotionless rationalist who believed that feelings had no place in human life. This Mr. Spock-style caricature likely stems from the rigour and abstraction of his philosophical writing. Kant does emphasize reason as the foundation of morality, but this doesn't mean he disregarded emotions entirely. In fact, Kant acknowledged the importance of emotions in human life. He believed that feelings like sympathy and compassion could inspire us to act morally. However, he argued that these emotions should not be the basis of moral action. For Kant, morality is about duty and principles, not about acting on fleeting emotional impulses. This distinction doesn't diminish the value of emotions, it simply places them in a supporting role rather than in the driver's seat. Moreover, Kant's exploration of aesthetics, particularly in his discussion of beauty and the sublime, demonstrates his deep appreciation for the emotional aspects of human experience. His philosophy isn't about suppressing emotions, but about understanding their place within a broader framework of reason and morality. Another common criticism is that Kant's ethical system, centered on the categorical imperative, is overly rigid and impractical. Critics often point to Kant's famous assertion that it is always wrong to lie, even if lying could save someone's life, as evidence of this rigidity. While it's true that Kant places a high value on principles, this criticism oversimplifies his position. Kant's emphasis on universalizability, the idea that moral principles must apply to everyone equally, is intended to create a consistent and fair framework for ethical decision-making. It's not about blind adherence to rules, but about ensuring that our actions respect the dignity and autonomy of all individuals. In practical terms, Kant's ethics encourage us to think carefully about the broader implications of our actions. His philosophy doesn't ignore the complexities of real-world situations, it challenges us to navigate those complexities with integrity and respect for universal moral principles. While this approach may sometimes feel demanding, it also provides a powerful framework for addressing ethical dilemmas in a principled way. Many people assume that Kant's philosophy is so dense and abstract that it's only accessible to academics and professional philosophers. This reputation isn't entirely undeserved. Kant's writing can be notoriously difficult to pass, and his ideas require careful study to fully grasp. However, the core insights of Kant's philosophy are relevant to everyone. His questions about morality, freedom, and the nature of knowledge address fundamental aspects of the human condition. You don't need to be a scholar to appreciate the importance of treating others with respect, considering the universality of your actions, or contemplating the relationship between perception and reality. In fact, Kant's emphasis on autonomy and reason underscores the idea that philosophical inquiry is something anyone can engage in. That's partly why we do this. His work challenges us to think critically about our beliefs and actions, encouraging a kind of intellectual independence that transcends academic boundaries. Some interpretations of Kant's philosophy portray him as a staunch critic of religion, arguing that his emphasis on reason and autonomy leaves no room for faith. While it's true that Kant was critical of certain religious doctrines and practices, this doesn't mean he was anti-religion. Kant's philosophy actually includes a significant role for religion, particularly in his ethical framework. In his view, the idea of God serves as a moral ideal, a representation of perfect goodness that inspires us to strive for moral improvement. Kant also saw religious faith as a way of reinforcing our commitment to ethical principles, providing a sense of purpose and accountability beyond our immediate circumstances. What Kant opposed was the use of religion as a substitute for reason. He believed that moral principles should be grounded in rationality, not in the authority of religious institutions or texts. This distinction reflects his broader commitment to autonomy and critical thinking, rather than a wholesale rejection of religious belief. Another myth about Kant is that he was a socially isolated hermit, entirely absorbed in his work and disconnected from the world around him. While it's true that Kant lived a highly disciplined and routine-based life, that doesn't mean he was a recluse. Kant was an active member of his community in Königsberg, engaging in lively intellectual discussions with friends and colleagues. He was also known for his hospitality, hosting regular dinner parties where the conversation ranged from philosophy to politics to natural science. These gatherings reflect Kant's curiosity and his appreciation for social connection, even as his intellectual pursuits remained his primary focus. So why do these misconceptions about Kant continue to circulate? Part of the reason lies in the complexity of his work. Kant's ideas are challenging to summarize, and oversimplifications often lead to misunderstandings. Additionally, the stereotypical image of the detached rational philosopher has a certain cultural appeal, even if it doesn't fully capture Kant's character or philosophy. Another factor is the selective representation of Kant's ideas. Critics and admirers alike often focus on specific aspects of his work, emphasizing certain themes while neglecting others. This can lead to a skewed picture that doesn't do justice to the depth and nuance of his thought. Understanding Kant requires us to move beyond the caricatures and engage with his work in its own terms. Far from being a cold, detached rationalist, Kant was a deeply engaged thinker who sought to address some of the most profound questions of human existence. His philosophy challenges us to think critically, act morally, and appreciate the beauty and complexity of the world around us. Kant's legacy is not just for academics or philosophers, it is for anyone who values reason, autonomy, and the pursuit of truth. By addressing these misconceptions, we can better appreciate the richness of his ideas and their relevance to our lives today. Immanuel Kant's huge influence on philosophy has solidified his reputation as one of the intellectual giants of Western thought. But in today's world, his ideas have taken on a new and unexpected form. They've become meme-worthy. Yes, Kant, the methodical philosopher who rarely strayed from the streets of Königsberg, is now a subject of internet humor and pop culture references. How did we get here, and what does this tell us about Kant's legacy? To understand why Kant is a favorite of meme creators, we need to consider the unique qualities of his philosophy and persona. Kant's ideas are dense, paradoxical, and often counterintuitive. For example, his notion of the thing in itself, or noumena, versus the appearance, phenomena, is practically begging for a side-by-side meme format. Add to this his famously rigid daily routine and his reputation for abstraction, and you have a perfect storm of meme material. The humour often comes from juxtaposing Kant's lofty ideas with the mundane absurdities of modern life. Imagine a meme featuring Kant's categorical imperative. Act only according to what maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. Say that 3 times fast. Below it, a caption reads, "Me deciding whether to eat an entire pizza at 2 a.m. It is this blend of high-minded theory and relatable human behaviour that gives Kant memes their charm. Kant's ideas have also found their way into broader pop culture beyond internet humour. References to his philosophy frequently appear in literature, film, and television. For instance, his categorical imperative has been adapted and explored in countless stories that wrestle with moral dilemmas. Think of characters who face impossible ethical choices, like in The Dark Knight or Breaking Bad. These narratives often echo Kantian themes of duty versus inclination. Even science fiction owes a debt to Kant. His exploration of how the mind shapes experience laid the groundwork for questions about artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and the nature of consciousness, themes that dominate films like The Matrix and Blade Runner. When we question whether reality is a simulation, we're essentially engaging with Kant's legacy. While Kant memes may seem purely comedic, they also serve a deeper purpose. They make philosophy accessible. For many people, Kant's work feels impenetrable, locked behind walls of jargon and complex argumentation. Memes act as a gateway, distilling his ideas into digestible snippets that spark curiosity. They invite people to explore Kant's philosophy without the intimidation factor. Take, for example, a meme that riffs on Kant's distinction between phenomena and noumena. A caption might read, "When you realize you'll never truly know the essence of your cat, only your perception of it." It's funny, but it also introduces a core concept of Kant's thought. Someone who finds this amusing might be inspired to look deeper, to ask, what did Kant really mean by that? Kant's unexpected rise as a meme philosopher underscores the adaptability of his ideas. Despite their 18th century origins, his concepts resonate with the challenges and absurdities of modern life. His emphasis on autonomy and reason, for instance, aligns with contemporary debates about personal freedom and ethical responsibility in an interconnected world. His reflections on aesthetics and the sublime find echoes in how we experience digital art, virtual reality, and the vastness of the internet itself. Moreover, Kant's insistence on universality, on principles that apply to all rational beings, takes on new significance in a globalized multicultural society. Whether we're debating climate change, AI ethics, or social justice, Kant's framework provides a lens for navigating these complex issues that demand both individual and collective action. Part of what makes Kant so meme-worthy is his own rigidity, both in his philosophy and in his personal life. His daily routine, which included taking walks so punctual that neighbours set their clocks by him, is a running joke in philosophical circles. This humour works because it humanizes Kant, transforming him from an intimidating intellectual figure into someone relatable. We've all felt the tension between structure and spontaneity, between high ideals and everyday habits. Kant's strictness becomes a way to poke fun at our own struggles with balance and discipline. Of course, not all Kant memes capture the nuances of his thought. Oversimplifications and misinterpretations abound. A meme might reduce the categorical imperative to a glorified golden rule, or turn transcendental idealism into a joke about solipsism. While these distortions can be frustrating for serious Kant scholars, they're also an opportunity. Each meme, accurate or not, represents a chance to engage with Kant's philosophy and correct misconceptions. At the end of the day, the memification of Kant highlights the enduring relevance of his ideas. His work continues to provoke thought, spark debates, and inspire creativity, even in the unlikeliest of formats. This ability to transcend time, place, and medium speaks to the universality of Kant's philosophy. Whether he's being dissected in a graduate seminar or laughed at on Instagram, Kant's legacy endures. Kant reminds us that philosophy isn't just for the ivory tower. It's for anyone willing to grapple with life's big questions. And if a meme about noumena and pizza can get someone to pick up the critique of pure reason, then that's a win for philosophy. So here's to Kant, the philosopher who proves that even the most abstract ideas can have a sense of humour. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have to say on the OG overthinker, Immanuel Kant. As we bring our exploration of Immanuel Kant to a close, one thing becomes abundantly clear. Kant's ideas, despite their complexity and occasional impenetrability, remain as relevant today as they were in the 18th century. His work challenges us to think critically about the world, our place in it, and the principles that guide our actions. From his meticulous daily routine to his groundbreaking philosophical revolutions, Kant's life and legacy offer endless lessons for those willing to engage with his thoughts. We began by delving into Kant's disciplined lifestyle, a reflection of the same order and rigor he brought to his philosophical inquiries. His daily routine might seem overly rigid, even dull by modern standards, but it was the foundation for his intellectual productivity and his pursuit of reason. Kant's life reminds us that structure and discipline can create the conditions for profound creativity and discovery. Then we tackled the Copernican Revolution in philosophy, a bold reimagining of how we understand knowledge and reality. By placing the human mind at the center of his inquiries, Kant didn't just answer the philosophical debates of his time, he reshaped them entirely. His insights into phenomena and noumena invite us to reflect on the limits of perception and the nature of reality itself, questions that remain central in philosophy, science, and even popular culture. Kant's categorical imperative provided us with a moral framework that emphasizes universality, autonomy, and respect for humanity. While critics may find his ethics demanding or rigid, Kant's commitment of principle over convenience serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of integrity in ethical decision-making. His insistence that morality arises from duty, not self-interest, challenges us to live by principles that honor the dignity of others. We also explore Kant's reflections on beauty and the sublime, a side of his philosophy that reveals his appreciation for the emotional and aesthetic dimensions of life. His distinction between the harmonious beauty of nature and the overwhelming grandeur of the sublime helps us understand why certain experiences move us so deeply. Kant's aesthetics encourage us to see art and nature not just as sources of pleasure, but as gateways to deeper understanding. Misconceptions about Kant are rife, from the idea that he was a cold rationalist to the myth that his work is inaccessible to non-philosophers. Now, we've debunked these myths, showing that Kant's philosophy, while challenging, is deeply human and profoundly relevant. His emphasis on autonomy, reason, and universal principles speaks to concerns that transcend time and place. Finally, we arrived at Kant's unexpected role as the meme philosopher of the internet age. His transformation into a subject of humor and pop culture might seem incongruous with his serious demeanor, but it highlights the enduring adaptability of his ideas. Whether through a graduate seminar or a viral meme, Kant continues to provoke thought and inspire curiosity. Kant's legacy is not confined to the academic halls of philosophy departments. His work resonates in ethical debates about artificial intelligence, environmentalism, and human rights. His reflections on aesthetics influence how we think about art and beauty in a digital world, and his insistence on universality provides a framework for navigating the moral complexities of a globalized society. So what can we take away from Kant? First, that philosophy is for everyone. It's not about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions and engaging with the complexities of existence. Second, that ideas matter. Even the most abstract concepts can shape how we live, work, and relate to one another. And finally, that humor and humanity have a place in even the most serious endeavors. Kant may not have been a comedian, but his work's relevance, even in meme form, proves that philosophy can be both profound and approachable. As we wrap up, let's remember Kant's most enduring lesson, the importance of autonomy and reason. To think for ourselves, to act with integrity, and to treat others with respect and dignity. These are the principles that define a life well lived. Kant's philosophy challenges us to strive for these ideals, even when the path is difficult or unclear. I want to thank all of you for joining me today in this rather dense exploration of Immanuel Kant. I hope that some of it's been enlightening and you've got some more understanding of his philosophy, and that it's been a little bit interesting, hopefully. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the podcast, leaving us a review, or sharing it with people who might find it interesting. Your support helps us to continue to bring you this sort of content. As always, if anything in this episode has resonated with you in any way, then I would love to hear from you. You can share your stories on our website at theobservingeye.com or on social media. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@theobservingeye and on TikTok and Instagram with the handle @theobservingeye as well. You can also email me now, which is kind of terrifying, on david@theobservingeye.com. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful Christmas. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.
You've been listening to The Observing Eye. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope it's been useful. And if you're interested in any more of my writing or work around psychology, philosophy, and general day-to-day living, please go and take a look at my Substack, which is theobservingeye.com. And that's I as in the letter, not I as in the gelatinous organ through which you see. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.